Congratulations, my brother-in-law said, raising his glass at my own baby shower, to a fresh start, because as of Monday, my brother is officially stepping down from the company. 40 people went silent. My husband's fork clattered onto his plate. I sat there, 7 months pregnant, one hand resting on my stomach, and I smiled at Marcus like he had just told me the nicest joke I'd heard all year, because he had no idea what was sitting in my laptop bag by the door. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, hit the like button now. If you've ever stayed silent while someone underestimated you, comment here below. And subscribe to Story Retribution, because today's ending proves that karma always arrives, just not when people expect it. I'm a forensic auditor. I spend my career finding the small inconsistencies that most people never notice. The transaction that's off by a few $100s, the invoice with a date that doesn't quite line up, the signature that's just slightly wrong. It's careful, patient work. People think it's boring. I always thought it was the closest thing to being a detective without ever leaving my desk. My husband, Ryan, and his older brother, Marcus, inherited their father's logistics company, Callahan Freight, 6 years ago after their dad passed away suddenly. The company had 30 employees, a decent fleet of trucks, and contracts with 3 regional distributors that had taken their father 15 years to build. The will split ownership 50-50 between the brothers, with Ryan handling operations and Marcus handling finance and client relationships. I never trusted Marcus. Not because he was cruel exactly. He was smooth, charming, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday and always picked up the check at dinner. But something about the way he talked about the company always felt like he was performing generosity rather than practicing it. Ryan trusted him completely. They were brothers. Ryan believed family didn't lie to family, and for years, I let that belief stand, because I had no proof otherwise, only instinct. The small betrayal happened about a year and a half ago. Ryan came home one evening looking confused, holding a printed loan agreement Marcus had asked him to sign, a document stating that Ryan had borrowed $40,000 from the company's operating account for personal expenses the previous spring. Ryan hadn't borrowed anything. Marcus said it was probably a bookkeeping mix-up, Ryan told me, but he needs me to sign this to clean up the records before the year-end audit. Something in my stomach turned cold. I asked to see the document. The formatting was clean, professional, the kind of paperwork that looked completely legitimate unless you knew exactly what you were looking at. I didn't say anything to Ryan that night. I just quietly took photos of every page. I started paying closer attention after that. The bigger betrayal revealed itself slowly, the way most financial fraud does, not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 small ones stacked carefully on top of each other. Over the following months, I began cross-referencing whatever documents Ryan brought home, comparing them against public business filings, bank disclosure statements Ryan had access to as a 50% owner, and old financial records from before their father passed. What I found made my hands shake the first time I laid it all out on our kitchen table. Marcus had been quietly diluting Ryan's ownership for over a year, using a series of manufactured loan agreements like the one Ryan had almost signed. Marcus was creating fake debt that Ryan supposedly owed the company, debt that, under a clause buried deep in their father's original operating agreement, could be converted into ownership shares if left unpaid for 18 months. Marcus had been forging Ryan's signature on some documents and pressuring him into signing others without fully explaining what they meant, always framing it as routine paperwork, always rushing him, always catching him at the end of exhausting workdays. If the pattern continued uninterrupted, in 6 more months, Marcus would legally own nearly 70% of their father's company, and Ryan would be left as a minority partner in the business their own father had built for both of them equally. I didn't tell Ryan everything right away. I needed to be certain. the way I would be certain before flagging any fraud case professionally. I reached out carefully to a forensic document examiner I'd worked with on previous cases, a woman named Priya, and asked her to authenticate the signatures on 3 of the loan documents Ryan had shown me over the past year. Her findings confirmed what I already suspected. 2 of the 3 signatures were forged, close, but not Ryan's actual signature, created using a signature matching software commonly used, ironically, in exactly the kind of fraud cases I investigated for a living. I also pulled Callahan Freight's operating account statements, which Ryan had access to as co-owner, and traced the actual money Marcus claimed Ryan had borrowed. The trail led to a separate account Marcus controlled, one that had been quietly funding a real estate investment in his own name, unrelated entirely to the company. Marcus wasn't just diluting his brother's ownership, he was stealing company funds and using fraudulent loan agreements to cover the theft while simultaneously engineering a hostile takeover of his own family's business. I built the file exactly the way I build every case professionally, methodically, without emotion, every document labeled, every discrepancy highlighted, every piece of evidence cross-referenced and verified twice. I met with an attorney, Mr. Alvarez, who specialized in shareholder disputes and corporate fraud, and together we prepared everything needed to formally challenge the fraudulent loan agreements and expose the forged signatures. I told Ryan everything 4 days before my baby shower. He sat at our kitchen table, staring at the evidence, his hands pressed flat against his face for a long time before he finally spoke. "He's my brother," Ryan said quietly. "I know," I said. "That's why I needed to be absolutely certain before I told you." Ryan wanted to confront Marcus privately, quietly, the way he handled everything with his brother, patiently, hoping for an honest conversation instead of a fight. I understood that instinct, but I also knew Marcus. I knew that a private confrontation would give him room to manipulate the narrative, to twist the story before anyone else could see the truth clearly. So when Marcus stood up at my own baby shower and announced, in front of 40 family members and friends, that Ryan was voluntarily stepping down from the company Monday morning, I understood exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just betraying Ryan financially. He was staging the final public humiliation, framing Ryan as someone who had failed, who couldn't keep up, who was gracefully bowing out, before anyone had the chance to hear a different version of events. "To a fresh start," Marcus continued, raising his glass higher, smiling at the room. "Sometimes it takes real strength to admit when the business side of things just isn't your strong suit, bro. I'm proud of you for making the mature decision." A few relatives clapped politely, confused but trusting Marcus's easy confidence, the way people always had. Ryan's mother, sitting near the front, looked between her sons with visible worry. "Ryan, sweetheart, is this true?" I set down my water glass calmly and stood up, one hand still resting on my stomach. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I think everyone deserves the real story before we move forward with any toasts." Marcus's smile flickered just slightly. "Sweetheart, this is really a business conversation, not exactly baby shower material." "I disagree," I said, "since you decided to make it baby shower material first." I walked to the door, retrieved my laptop bag, and returned to the table, pulling out the folder Priya and Mr. Alvarez had helped me prepare weeks earlier. "This," I said, placing the first page down, "is a forensic signature analysis, comparing Ryan's authenticated signature to the signature on 3 separate loan agreements presented to him over the past 14 months. According to this certified report, 2 of these 3 signatures are forged." The room went quiet. Marcus's easy smile started to crack at the edges. "That's insane," he said. "Those documents were reviewed by the company accountant." "The company accountant who reports directly to you," I said calmly, "and who, according to these bank records—" I placed the second page down. transferred the majority of those loaned funds not to Ryan's personal account, but into an escrow account associated with a real estate purchase under your name, closed 4 months ago. Wait, what? Ryan's mother whispered, staring between the papers and her older son. You've been forging your brother's signature, I continued, manufacturing fake debt to trigger the ownership dilution clause in your father's original operating agreement, and using company funds to personally invest in real estate, all while quietly maneuvering to take 70% ownership of a company your father built for both of you equally. Marcus's face had gone completely pale now, his glass frozen halfway to the table. I was going to explain everything eventually, Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it now, I said, in front of everyone you just tried to publicly humiliate. Silence stretched across the room. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, tried again, and produced nothing. Then a voice spoke up from near the back of the room. Denise, the company's longtime office manager, who had worked for their father for over a decade and had been invited to the shower as a family friend. I need to say something, Denise said quietly, standing up. I've had concerns about some of those loan documents for months. I flagged inconsistencies to Marcus directly back in the spring, and I was told to keep quiet, that it was complicated family financial planning. She looked at Ryan, then at me. I kept copies of my original emails raising those concerns because something about it never sat right with me. I'll bring them to whoever needs them. Marcus's shoulders sagged. The last person in the room who could have covered for him had just chosen not to. Marcus, Ryan's mother said, her voice trembling. Is this true? Did you forge your brother's signature? Marcus said nothing. He simply stared down at the documents spread across the table, the same documents that, moments earlier, he had assumed no one would ever question. Mr. Alvarez, seated quietly near the back of the room throughout the shower, dressed simply enough that most guests assumed he was simply another family friend, stood up. I represent Ryan in this matter, he said calmly. We've already filed the necessary paperwork to formally contest the fraudulent loan agreements and freeze any further ownership transfer under the operating agreement's dilution clause. Marcus will need to arrange a formal meeting very soon. Marcus's face had drained of every trace of the confidence he'd walked in with an hour earlier. You planned this, he said quietly, looking at me. At a baby shower. No, I said. You planned a public humiliation at a baby shower. I simply made sure the truth arrived at the same event. The family reactions unfolded slowly across the room after that. Ryan finally stood beside me, his hand finding mine across the table, his voice steady for the first time since Marcus's toast. I trusted you, Ryan said to his brother. For over a year, I trusted every document you put in front of me because you're my brother, and Dad taught us family doesn't lie to family. Marcus still had no answer. He sat back down slowly, staring at his own hands, the golden confidence that had carried him through every family gathering for years now completely gone. Ryan's mother walked over and sat beside her older son, not comforting him, simply sitting, her face a mixture of heartbreak and disbelief that would take a long time to fully process. The emotional resolution settled over the room quietly after that, the way real reckonings usually do, not through shouting, but through the slow, undeniable weight of truth, finally being seen clearly by everyone who needed to see it. Guests began quietly gathering their things, offering Ryan quiet words of support on their way out, several of them stopping to squeeze my hand or touch my shoulder gently as they passed. Denise stayed behind afterward, sitting with Ryan and me at the now mostly empty table, going through her old emails on her phone, making sure we had everything we needed for Mr. Alvarez's formal case. I should have said something months ago, she admitted quietly. I'm sorry I didn't push harder. You said something today, I told her. That's what mattered most. I didn't feel triumphant, sitting there at my own baby shower surrounded by half-eaten cake and abandoned gift bags. I felt something steadier than triumph, The quiet relief of finally setting down a weight I'd been carrying carefully for months, verifying every detail twice before I ever let it become real for Ryan. The final lesson settled over me later that night, resting on the couch with my feet propped up, Ryan's hand resting gently on my stomach where our daughter shifted quietly inside me. Marcus had spent over a year assuming Ryan's trust made him an easy target. That family loyalty meant Ryan would sign whatever was placed in front of him without question. He mistook Ryan's patience for blindness, mistook my quiet observation for irrelevance, assuming the pregnant sister-in-law running numbers in the background could never possibly be the one to unravel a scheme he'd spent months carefully constructing. He never imagined that the woman who spent her career finding exactly this kind of fraud for strangers would eventually turn that same careful attention toward her own family's kitchen table. I never raised my voice at that baby shower. I never called Marcus a thief in front of everyone, never listed every quiet manipulation out loud. I let 4 documents and 1 forensic report do what a year of Ryan's quiet trust never could: reveal the truth completely, undeniably, in front of the exact audience Marcus had chosen to humiliate us in front of. Karma doesn't announce itself with shouting. It doesn't arrive the moment betrayal happens. Sometimes it waits patiently, gathering evidence quietly in a laptop bag by the door, until the exact moment someone raises a glass to celebrate a lie in front of the wrong person. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button right now. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? If you enjoy stories about family betrayal, emotional drama, shocking revenge, and the justice that always finds its way back, subscribe to Story Retribution and turn on the bell so you never miss the next story. Tomorrow's story might be even more unbelievable. See you then.